Well, yes, it's very important to get the light in the painting, but it's very easy for me. I cheat.
Born in Fredericton, New Brunswick in 1935, Mary Pratt got her Bachelor of Fine Arts from Mount Allison University, where she studied under Alex Colville and Lawren Harris. She also met her first husband there, the artist Christopher Pratt. Mary Pratt's work is collected nationally and internationally in museums, galleries, corporations, and private collections. A retrospective of her work will tour across Canada in 2013 and 2014. We met Mary Pratt in her home in St. John's, Newfoundland.
Mary, I wanted to start by asking if you're a happy person.
Well, I think that's a rather loaded question,
well, I guess
isn't
it is, in a way, given what we've been talking about prior to starting this interview, but also because I think that people would assume from many of your paintings that you're a complacent and happy person. But I know you've said in other interviews that jolly is not your nature.
No, it isn't. I like to give the impression, because I look much better when I smile. You know, I do. And when I look gloomy, I look awful. And you don't want to look awful. So I try to be happy. But in actual fact, I know the world I live in.
Yeah.
I know the dangers. And I know that we live in what seems to us in Canada, in a way, especially in Newfoundland, a lovely, lovely life. We have a lovely life. But the dangers are around us all the time. And all you have to do is put on the television or the radio or anything, and you realize how everything is kind of coming closer and closer to making the world we live in not so great.
So does that outlook inform any of your art, or has it over the years?
It has to. It's in my head. Mm-hmm. It has to. It's there all the time. If I've sort of had to try to figure out what it is that bothers me, what kind of a person I am. And I've had all these months this past winter to kind of think about stuff like that. And I've never indulged in thinking like that because I've painted and I've tried to, kind of concentrate on the painting. And I think that what I am is a person who's afraid. I'm afraid all the time. Mm. I'm always aware that something terrible might happen. And I don't know where that comes from, but I think it's a way I've always been. I have a sister who was never afraid. She didn't mind doing all kinds of wonderful things. But I was the sissy. I was afraid. So I don't think, despite the fact that I try to put on this happy face like they say you should do, I don't think I am a particularly happy person at all.
I realized this about myself a long time ago, that I'm a sucker for light. That light in certain, the way it falls on certain things at certain times of day, on certain people, has an effect on me. Always has had. It will affect my emotions, it will affect the intellectual mood at the time and so on. Your paintings have always seemed to me to be about light. One of the things that I find so appealing and so attractive in your work is because of the way you use light. Do you feel the same way about light?
Well, yes, it's very important to get the light in the painting, but it's very easy for me. I cheat.
Explain that. Explain how you cheat.
Well, first of all, I have a camera that I use. Now, the camera doesn't come first. What comes first is the image. I see this thing, whatever it may be. Right. I come across it, and I think, oh, my God, isn't that gorgeous? And it's a gut reaction. If it's not a gut reaction, I don't worry about it. I don't bother. But if it's a gut reaction, I think, maybe I can do something with this. So I get out the camera, and I take slides. I don't do digital camera. Mm-hmm. I don't do digital imagery because I think it's somewhat flat. So I work with slides. And when the slides come back, I put them in a projector. I have what's called a telemate projector, which is an ancient thing. It's an antique at this point. And this telemate has a projector, and it also has a screen. So I project the thing onto the projector slide onto a canvas or a board that's been painted with white gesso.
Okay.
And there's a light in the middle, see? There's a light that's in the middle of the slide, and it affects the whole slide. And so I make a map of the image. When I'm finished, you'd never know what the image was going to be because it's just little lines and circles and so on. Because the light goes through the gel on the slide, and all of these little circles of imagery and everything don't look like anything to anybody except me. And then I put the slide in the part of the projector that's a screen. Mm-hmm. And once again, the light is in the middle. And so I have the light in the middle, and it spreads out to take in the whole image, of course. But the fact that the light is in the middle gives the painting that wonderful luminescence, because I just copy. I mean, you know.
But you say that as if it's the easiest thing in the world, but it's not like using tracing paper or anything. I mean, there is a quantum leap between having that image in a photograph and then what you manage to create.
Oh, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's really hard.
Yeah.
When I did the painting of the turkey underneath the tinfoil, for instance, I remember there are a lot of little triangles where the light would hit the top of the little bit of tinfoil. You know, tinfoil sort of folds in triangles. And up at the top there would be, you know, a really pale light. Maybe it would be sort of a lemony color. And then it would go down, and it would be, as you went down, and I mean, you're looking at something that's not much bigger than my fingernail. You know, it's just tiny. And as it went down, it would become kind of peachy color, and then at the bottom it might be red or purple or something like that. And I used to have to put my finger on that part of the slide where I saw it, or the screen, and I used to have to put my finger right on there, or I'd never find it in this mess of drawing that I had. Because the drawing didn't look like what was on the screen at all. It was just, you know, it was just a mess of
well, using that as an example, or the ones in which you have saran wrap, for example, things where the reflective surface is so diverse. When you're working on something like that, I have to assume that it is a physically painstaking thing to do when you're sitting in front of the canvas trying to do that, and that it takes a very, very long time because all that stuff seems so minute, like just what you just described. Is that true? Does it take a long time?
Oh, yes, it does. It takes forever. At first, when I started to paint, I would assume that it was going to take me 6 months to do painting. But it didn't matter because I didn't have to sell the work Christopher was painting.
Right.
And we didn't need money down in Salmonier. Children didn't need money for anything. And people used to send us down food and clothes and things like that because we weren't making any money to speak of. But, you know, we were getting by. And I wasn't worried about any of that, so I could just think about the painting.
That frees you up in a way, doesn't it?
Oh, yes. Yes, it does.
Yeah.
But it was a new way of painting for me, and I didn't know anybody else did it. I mean, everybody said I was cheating, and my parents were appalled. And
Is it because you were taking the photograph? And
yes, and I was working with a camera, and they thought that this was really, really letting down the side, and I thought, well, I don't give a damn.
But it's something that has been done in the past many, many times.
You go right back to the when the first lens was made. I don't know whether Van Leeuwenhoek made the first lens, but, you know, he was way back there somewhere. But once you've done it yourself, you know who else does it. So if you go back to the Renaissance, you find evidence that people were using lenses then. Before people used lenses, hands were big, like Michelangelo's hands and all that are very big. They're very important to people. And so the important things, you know, he made big and important. But once the people began to use the lens, the hands become small and sort of dainty and, you know, quite acceptable. They're not these great big paws.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
But at the time, I mean, how did you respond to that criticism? Was that really hurtful to you?
Yes, it was. It was. I felt real bad about it. I thought I was doing a pretty good job, and I liked what I was doing. I loved what I was doing. And then all of a sudden it occurred to me that, well, maybe I was cheating. Maybe this was a horrible thing to do. But so I decided maybe I'd stop painting.
Yes.
I just stopped painting. People had always assumed that I would not be a painter, that Christopher would be the painter in the house. And so why not just stop and let him be? I had lots of work to do with the children, and I had constant company, so it wasn't as if I had nothing to do. But the children and Christopher were upset about this.
Yeah.
They didn't want me to stop painting.
Yeah.
And Christopher thought I'd go crazy if I did. And Mr. Pratt, Christopher's father, was extremely kind. And he realized how upset I was about the whole thing. And he said, Mary, you've simply got to go back and start painting again. You just really have to. Because you are a painter. That's what you are.
There, when we were speaking earlier, before we started doing the interview, and I told you that one of your paintings, the one of the houses in Fredericton, is one that had always had an impact on me. The first time I saw it, I remember, and it's the light in that picture. But you had told me that particular painting, there's a story behind that painting having to do with what you were just talking about.
Well, yes, that's true. I'm a terrible person about asking the great beyond to give me a hand now and then. For instance, one time we had to name a bunch of puppies, and we had 6 of them, I guess, to name. And I said, oh, well, why don't we just get the Bible? And we'll open the Bible, and I'll close my hands, and I'll point to a word, and we'll use that word for the puppy's name. It was a shocking thing to do, but anyway, that's what we did. And I said, we'll start with the runt. And so I closed my eyes and put my finger on this page. And the word was inch. And I thought, lovely, what a perfect name
the
for
runt
this.
is inch.
Yeah, right. It didn't always work quite that well.
Well, as long as you didn't have a dog named Jesus, I guess you were okay.
Well, we didn't go to the New Testament.
Good.
I don't know. But in any case, that was. So in this case, I went over to my studio pretty depressed and worried about my work. I had always wanted to be a painter. From the time I was 8, I had determined that I would be a painter. And from the time I was 3, I was painting with a brush in those horrible little tin sets that you used to get. Yeah. And it was terrible to give up the thought that I might be a painter. It was awful to think that I wouldn't be a painter. Anyway, I had a toffee box, one of those tin toffee boxes that has all those pretty pictures on the top. And I had so few slides in those days that they fit into this little toffee box. And I said, all right, if I am to be a painter, let this work. I'm going to close my eyes, I'm going to reach into the toffee box and pick out a slide. And if the slide is so good that I can't resist painting it, I will paint. So I reached into the toffee box, shut my eyes, picked out a slide, and it was the picture that I had taken from my father's driveway down Waterloo Row. So I was a painter. I had to paint that picture, had to do it. It was just home to me. I'd forgotten I even had that slide. Yeah. And there it was.
There you go. That's great. I'm so glad that happened.
Oh, yeah.
All right, tell me about the subject matter of your paintings. You have said that you see things that other people don't see, and you talked earlier about the gut reaction. Give me some examples from paintings that people would know of yours in the past that have done that to you.
Well, they all have.
Is that right? Okay, I guess
I mean,
so.
I don't bother to paint things unless I get a sort of a shiver. But at first, of course, the painting that resulted from the first time that happened was the painting of the bed with the black bedsteads and the red chenille bedspread. And I will tell you this. I've told it a million times, but I will tell you.
Go ahead.
Okay. Sure. I was walking down this very dark hallway, and the door to our bedroom was shut for some reason or other. And I opened the door, and it was a brilliant day. The sun was shining in off the river, and when the sun shines off water like that, it sort of shimmers, and it's, you know, it's just beautiful. The river was close enough to the house to give that shimmer. And there was the bed that I hadn't yet made, and the pillows were all kind of squashed together. Christopher and I slept in one twin bed, and the chenille bedspread that I had dyed, not very successfully red, was dripping underneath and sort of dripped down onto the, I think it was just the floor. I'm sure we didn't have a rug. And a blanket that I had unfortunately put in the dryer so that it was just like felt was sort of folded over that a little bit. And then the sheets were just a mass of white that was catching the light, as were the pillows. And I looked at this, and it was the closest thing to an erotic reaction that was not, you know, that I had ever had. It was just amazing. And I thought, well, this is how you figure out what to paint. This is how it works. So I went over to Christopher and I said, I need a square board or a canvas or something that's about, you know, yay big, and I need a proper easel. And he said, well, you can have what's here if you see anything you want. And Christopher always had lots of stuff around. So I found what I needed and so on. And Christopher and I slept on the sofa for a few days. And I did the painting very quickly because, you know, I wanted to get back in the bedroom. And that was before I was using a camera, so I painted from the object. But that's how it started. And then, you know, it's like everything then began to shimmer for me. And I'd look at something and I'd think, oh my God. And it's like somebody peeled something off my eyes or something. And the world just came alive for me. And it was just wonderful. It was wonderful. I could hardly wait to start the day because I knew there would be magic there. I knew. And there was. And I painted everything I could see around the house. And they had to be little paintings, of course, because, you know, I didn't have much time with the children. And, you know, a painting that took 45 minutes or whatever, just, you know, little things. And then I wanted to paint this supper table. And I said to Christopher, if you could take the kids away, I think I want to paint this. And he said, well, you can't paint that today because we're going to need the table in the morning and you got to wash the dishes. And, you know, you just can't leave it like that.
Reality gets in the way.
Yeah, right. And so I said, well, I'm going to try. At least I'll get a drawing done. He said, the light is changing so fast. But why don't I just take a slide for you? And I said, well, I don't see any point in that. I'd never work from it. And he said, oh, well, you never know. So he took a few slides. And when the slide came back, of course, I didn't finish the painting. I didn't even start it. I didn't even finish the drawing. So he said, now, isn't that what you wanted? And I looked at that slide, and I thought, wow. And I put it in a projector, and I started, and I never stopped. It was just wonderful. It showed me everything that I needed to know. And, you know, I could take my time. I didn't have to hurry. I could spend 6 months on this painting if I wanted to. And it showed me how the things were reflected in the table, or how things were sitting in a saucer, how the ketchup worked its way inside of the bottle, not just sort of red, but pale red and all different colors of red. And so I learned to paint again, all over again.
Yeah.
And
other people have given you slides that you've done paintings from as well, haven't they?
One.
Is that right?
I think there's only one.
Is that right?
Yes,
okay.
a fellow called Frank Ryan
okay. Yeah.
went fishing, and he he said, I looked down at that pail of fish, and I thought about Mary Pratt. I didn't know whether to take that as a compliment or not, but I thought, well, if it's a compliment, I think I'll have it. And he said, so I brought you the slide. And there it was, this bucket full of trout, and it even had the cover of his Nikon camera just beside the bottom of the pail. And there were all kinds of rocks in it. A nuisance to paint. You know, over and over again, rocks. And they weren't what was turning me on. It was the fish, you know. And the fish, there weren't very many, really, in a way. But I waited till Christopher went up to Toronto to bring a boat down. And he was going to be gone quite a long time. And so I thought, well, I'll have lots of time to concentrate on those wretched rocks. And so I painted it while he was not home. And I was really pleased that Frank had thought about me when he saw those fish, because it meant that he kind of knew what I was about. He kind of knew why I was painting what I was painting. And that pleased me. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the process. When you're sitting in front of the canvas, when you're working, is it, I mean, I used the word painstakingly earlier, and I meant that almost in a literal sense. I mean, there is, I think, physical pain involved. Your body has now turned itself into a shape that is reflective of how you sit when you paint for all those years, right? I mean, there is physical effort that goes into this.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous profession, painting. But, you see, the light and the image is coming over my shoulder. So in order to get myself out of the way, I got to get that shoulder down, and, you know, I got to have a brush in my hand. So I have to sit like that, which, you know, pushes my ribs the wrong way. And this goes on for hours. Mm-hmm. Like, I used to work for 12 hours at a time. And just stopping for coffee, or there was a time in Toronto when I was drinking 17 cups of coffee a day.
Oh.
Yeah, really bad. But I was lonely and I was in pain. I'd had a hip replacement, and you know, it was tricky. But anyway, this business of sitting like this, see, while I'm drawing, and, you know, you tense up because you've got to get all those little map things done. And then when you're finished the drawing, then the screen is here. So then you're twisting over like this, and you're looking at the screen, and then you're looking at the painting, and you're doing this all the time, and you're painting, and you're looking, and you're painting, and looking, and all that kind of stuff. And it's not a good thing to do. Now, I think that there are lots of people who are doing the same thing with computers now. Mm-hmm. I think people are hurting their backs working with computers. And one of the worst things, of course, is the girls in the grocery shops that are putting food into the grocery bags. You know, they're twisting like that all the time. So I'm not the only one, but I'm me. And it fooled me up. And it's now reached the point where my ribs are kind of pushing into my lungs, and that's not a good thing.
No.
And, well, you know, it's just difficult.
You're paying for your art.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Nobody else did.
Well, I know that's not, maybe once. But,
well,
tell me about the if there is an emotional element to it as well when you're painting, for you. I know that you've said certainly in the early years, you were very emotional when you were painting. Does that still happen today when you paint?
Not very much, because I'm focusing. Mm-hmm. I think the emotion for me, I'm subjective when I see the thing, very subjective. And I think that's a good thing. I think artists must be subjective. They just have to be. But for me, to focus, I have to be objective. So the two things are separate. When I see the thing, when it first occurs to me, when I do the photography and so on, I can be a bit of a basket case. But when I actually get to work, I calm down and I focus.
You're all business then.
Yeah, because absolutely everything has to be right or it won't work. I mean, I can't just start slapping stuff down. The minute I start to do that, I know from experience it's game over. I have to wipe it out and say, all right, Mary, now that's enough of that.
Have you done that? Have you actually tossed stuff out because you weren't satisfied with what you were doing?
Oh, good heavens, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, every summer I usually start, I didn't this year, but I usually start a great big work on paper. Don't ask me why, because every year it's the same thing. I end up throwing it out.
Really?
I rip it off the board and tear it up and cut it up and throw it out. There's been things that I've taken almost to completion and that I've worked on 3 or 4 months, and out she goes.
Really? And
Well,
what
yes.
brings you to that point?
Because I hadn't thought ahead properly to know how I was going to objectify perhaps a group of trees.
Okay.
And you see, although it looks as if everything I do is very real, and it looks as if realism is the real thing for me, in actual fact, I am accepting the abstraction that the camera gives me. I'm accepting the abstraction that comes through the gel. And, for instance, in that painting of the houses with the trees and so on, there was a particular abstraction that I accepted for the houses, and I painted them first. The yellow house, there was a lot left out, you see.
Yes.
And then when I got to the trees, what the camera had given me, what the slide was giving me, were a whole lot of circles, little circles of light. And I thought, geez, I mean, those are leaves, what am I going to do? And I started pretending, and I started to make little leaves instead of circles. But the circles themselves had all kinds of different colors in them. And I thought, well, damn. What abstraction worked on the right side of the painting has got to work on the left side. So I've got to accept those circles and hope that people read them as leaves.
Interesting. We have very little time left. I wanted to ask you one last question. I've talked to a lot of writers over the years about how they feel when they finished a work and it goes out there as a book, and it's like having, one many years ago said, it's like having your children go away. You know, it was yours, but now it's not yours anymore. Do you feel that way about your art? You spend so much time, so much effort, so much emotion goes into a piece, and then somebody else has it.
No, it's always mine.
Is that right?
It's always mine. Yeah, I saw it first, so I kept it. But I do have to sell it. But the copyright is mine, and the painting, the image, the whole thing about the painting remains with me.
We've run out of time. This has been fabulous. It's
Well,
been a
thank
great
you.
pleasure meeting you. Thank you very much.
Welcome.